Hello, and welcome to our final Future of California Elections webinar before November 3rd. Election Day, get ready to vote California. Some of you are longtime partners, but if this is your first event with us, Future of California Elections is a nonpartisan network of election officials and nonprofit partners working together to keep California's democracy strong and accessible to all voters. We featured our nonprofit partners in our last two webinars, sharing their strategies on voter engagement in a pandemic, and those resources are available on our website. Today, we're focusing the conversation on running elections in a pandemic, and we'll hear directly from those charged with this task, our election and government officials. It's my privilege to introduce California Secretary of State, Alex Padilla. Now for the second time, the first was at our virtual conference, and we're delighted to have him with us once again. His work as secretary is focused on modernizing the office, increasing voter registration and participation, and strengthening voting rights. Sponsored legislation to establish vote centers, expand early voting, and the implementation of same-day conditional voter registration with the Voters' Choice Act, and launched the California Motor Voter Program as well. He's always available to engage with us at all nonprofits across the state to ensure that voters are receiving timely and accurate information about the election process. He's going to share with us today the latest developments on how to get ready to vote for this election and the available resources from his office to support accurate information for voters. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Secretary Padilla.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, and hello, FOS family, everybody who's tuned in. This is one of the events I look forward to each and every year, but as with everything impacted by COVID, we are convened here virtually, but we're convened nonetheless. And what timing? We're 20 days from Tuesday, November 3rd, officially known as Election Day, but I invite you all to think about it simply as the last day to vote. So I know we started a couple minutes late, so I'll try to be brief and get to the Q&A portion of my time here. But just a quick overview on both how we're preparing for November. Many of you know a lot of this already, but just to be thorough and accurate, and how we're messaging to voters, because whether it's their options for voting and voting safely, to guarding against the ongoing challenge of misinformation and disinformation around elections, we have a lot of work to do still in the next several weeks. Coming into 2020, as we've been hearing ad nauseum, we knew we were entering the most consequential election of our lifetime. If we transport ourselves back to January of this year, we knew there was a lot of issues that voters were motivated over across the political spectrum, not choosing sides here, but we also had moved our March primary up, or primary election up to March instead of the historical June, in an effort to be more influential in the primary calendar for all political parties. And what was the result? We had both record registration going into the March primary and record turnout, more ballots cast in the March primary than any primary election in California history. So by those metrics, one could argue that the state of our democracy was strong. But our primary was prior to the declarations of emergency that were issued in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we see how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all areas of our lives. And it was also prior to the series of protests and demonstrations this last summer, which were in response to the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, not just a California call, but a national call for the end of systemic racism, discrimination, and an appeal for justice across the board, whether it's in the criminal justice system, education, access to healthcare, etc. I reference all that because 2020 seems to just keep giving the public reasons to engage. And we're continuing to see it. Before I go over the options for voters this November, let me just say a couple of data points that I think are indicators that we're in for a very robust turnout. Our last reported registration, which was a snapshot of 60 days prior to the election, showed that there were more than 21.2 million voters on the rolls, and it continues to go up each day. As many of you know, we launched our Where's My Ballot tool, the ability for voters to track their ballot through the delivery process, and I'll talk about that more in a minute here. More than 1.8 million voters have signed up for that the last time I checked, which was just yesterday. And if we look at just the ballots that have been returned in the first week, last week was the deadline for counties to issue vote by mail ballots out to every active registered voter. At this stage, 4 years ago, about 72,000 ballots had come back. 2020, more than 1 million. So again, I think it's all indicators that Californians are paying attention. They're doing what they need to do to prepare and vote this November. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented many challenges for my office and local elections officials in all 58 counties. But having worked together, many of you here in the FOS community with registrars throughout the state, legislative representatives in our office, here's the plan that we agreed on, and it seems to be just the right thing at the right time. Every active registered voter in California is receiving a vote by mail ballot. Many of them have already received it. Those who haven't, it should be arriving any day now. Folks have multiple options for how to return their ballot, either through the Postal Service, and even though the USPS has been in the news lately, I still think it's a reliable way to return your ballot. Return postage is prepaid, and we've extended the deadline by which ballots have to arrive at the county and still be counted to 17 days after the election, as long as they're postmarked on or before Election Day. Voters also have the option of delivering their ballot to any official ballot drop box in their county anytime up to and including Election Day itself. And we can talk more about that if you'd like. Voters also have the option of returning their ballot in person to any in-person voting location during the early voting period or on Election Day itself. Now, it's not an all vote by mail only election. We have worked with every county to ensure as many safe in-person opportunities to vote are available for voters who need it, both on Election Day and during an early voting period. Different counties have different schedules, but most of them will be having at least 3 days of early voting plus Election Day itself. So we are working hard to provide all these safe opportunities to vote, but they're limited in benefit if voters aren't aware. So I do want to make a mention to our aggressive voter education campaign to all voters, to all eligible voters to make sure they're registered voters to make sure they have verified their registration status. Now the ballots are out, calling its voters' attention to the ballots in their mailbox. There are options for returning them. For voters who will be voting in person, kind of like going to the grocery store, bring your mask, expect physical distancing, workers wearing PPE, all the public health measures being incorporated to maintain that as a safe voting experience. And of course, promoting Where's My Ballot? We've expanded ballot tracking from a handful of counties in the primary to the whole state of California. Any voter can sign up to receive automated notifications by email, by text message, or phone call on the status of their ballot through the delivery process, both on their way to the voter, on the way back to the county, including confirmation when the ballot has been received and when it's been counted. So the ultimate in transparency, ultimate in accountability. We're working hard to maintain public confidence in elections. And as I mentioned with some of the data points I mentioned earlier, I think Californians are getting the message and they're responding through engagement. So we think we're ready. We have 20 days to continue to put the message out there. And I thank all of you for your partnership every step of the way. We've been working together for years, as you know, not just in crafting a lot of the policies that have positioned California so well up until this point to inform, to advocate for the policies to be approved by the legislature and the governor and in the budget, and now working together to get the word out to every eligible voter in the state of California for a successful November 2020 election cycle. The last bit I'll mention is our voter education campaign, Vote Safe California, is also prioritizing how we counter misinformation and disinformation, not just on social media, but especially on social media, asking people to go to the official trusted sources of information about elections, that being their county elections department or the Secretary of State's office. We have bundled all of our tools and resources in one location on our website at vote.ca.gov. People can still go there to register to vote, verify their registration status, find cybersecurity information, sign up to be poll workers. Y'all helped us spread the word on our poll worker recruitment initiative this year because of the needs that counties had with so many of the poll workers that have helped in years past not being available this November because of the pandemic. Vote.ca.gov is also where people can get information, contact information for their specific county. Of course, sign up for Where's My Ballot and more. So it's going to be a unprecedented election in unprecedented times, but I think we're going to make history through the levels of registration and turnout this November. So if I still have a few minutes left, I'll actually cut it short, add those minutes to the Q&A session. But Astrid and the whole team, thank you again for convening us. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your partnership.
And thank you, Secretary Padilla, for your remarks. We are going to transition to Q&A panel with Secretary Padilla. So Future of California Elections brings together non-partisan nonprofit organizations to consider together what a modern and accessible California election experience would look like. Our network reflects California's diverse electorate, and with that today, we have just a few representatives from our network. Each representative will introduce themselves and pose their question for Secretary Padilla. Now, unfortunately, due to time constraints, we won't take any live audience Q&A, but please feel free to post your question in the Q&A feature. And if we can get to it, we will, but we will definitely follow up post-event if we don't. So we will hear questions from CalPIRG students, League of Women Voters of California, Disability Rights California, and the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, the NALEO Educational Fund. And let's take it away with our first representative from our nonprofits.
Thank you, Lupe. Hello, Secretary Padilla. Thank you so much to you and your staff for all the work that you're doing for our elections, especially in this difficult time. My name is Prabdeep Rai, and I'm the statewide board secretary and the UCLA chapter chair for CalPIRG students. I'm also a fourth-year history student at UCLA. CalPIRG students, or the California Student Public Interest Research Group, is the oldest and the largest completely student-run and student-funded nonprofit advocacy group in California. We're a statewide association. We have 8 chapters across the UC system, representing over 35,000 dues-paying student members across the state. We also run a program on our campuses to teach students organizing skills to become leaders in their communities. We've been working to create positive social change for 45 years on issues like protecting the environment, making higher education more affordable, and of course, turning out the youth vote. Our priority campaign this year is our New Voters Project to turn out a historic youth vote this election. Our New Voters Project is our nation's largest and the oldest field-based young voter mobilization program, and we've helped register more than 2 million young people to vote and made 2.5 million personal reminder contacts since 1984. And during the 2018 midterms, we helped register over 6,000 students statewide and got 500,000 get out the vote contacts, which led to a 300% increase in voter turnout here at UCLA in the midterm election. So far this year, many students have registered to vote with California's studentvote.org as a result of the statewide competition that your office helped set up, as well as all campus emails from university chancellors, hundreds of student groups, and faculty sharing their link with their members and their classes. And of course, lots and lots of phone calls that are being made by our volunteers and interns to unregistered student voters. At UC Berkeley, an all-campus email on the primary voter registration deadline actually helped register 900 students to vote on our site. My question for you is, what do you think are the next steps that we should be pushing for to further institutionalize voting on our campuses so we can help students vote and get them out to the polls, especially with campuses online?
No, great question. And I think there's definitely room to build on the tremendous progress we've made. You know, I think for folks who aren't aware, it's not just you know, informal partnerships that we've developed with CalPIRG, other student organizations, and different campuses as well. But my office has formal MOUs with the UC system, the CSU system, the private colleges and universities in California, as well as the California community colleges. And so what we've been doing is sort of building into those MOUs all these innovative ideas that are successful every cycle. We formalize them and institutionalize them. So, using the communications platforms that the different systems of higher education have with their students and of course their faculty and other staff members, with the reminders about voter registration deadline, don't forget to vote, etc. I think we had a tremendously successful 2018 ballot bowl competition. You remember the ballot bowl or have heard of it? That spawned a lot of very creative, whether it was outreach events, activities, messaging, social media graphics and things of that nature that we can then expand on, right? We can replicate that on across campuses throughout the state and continue to build on that cycle after cycle. So I think there is a lot of room for continued progress and success, but it's built on the success that we've had in the 2018 cycle and in this year's primary, and we're seeing it now in the general.
Thank you so much, Secretary Padilla.
All right.
Good afternoon, Secretary Padilla. It's great to be speaking with you today. My name is Mia Villasenor, and I've been interning with the League of Women Voters of California this summer. So the League of Women Voters of California is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government through voter education and advocacy. So the League produces voter education resources such as the Voters Edge California, the Easy Voter Guide, and Elect Justice California, to inform millions of voters about what and who is on their ballot each election. So my question is regarding vote by mail, which will be new to many voters this election season. Can you explain what happens when a voter forgets to sign their ballot envelope, or if the signature doesn't match the one on file? And how long will the voter have to correct the problem? And what tips do you have for voters to ensure that their mail ballot counts?
Okay, great question, because I do think there's a lot of people who are going to be voting by mail for the first time, maybe voting for the first time, or voting for the first time in a long time. So it's, just proves the point about how important voter education is, in addition to providing all these safe options and opportunities for voters to cast their ballot. I'm going to take the liberty of sort of expanding the question a little bit to address some vote by mail security questions as well, because we know vote by mail has been called into question. Like, vote by mail is convenient, vote by mail is secure, and we have a lot of experience with it in California, as do many other states across the country. Among the security measures in place to protect the integrity of vote by mail, just mention a couple. We can start with the ballots themselves. Bet you didn't know that every county, every election selects specific paper types to print the ballots on that include watermarks and other distinguishing features to help guard against counterfeit ballots, right? That's one of the conspiracy theories that's been thrown out there. So we protect against that. When vote by mail ballots are returned, they have to come back in the official return envelope. Return postage is prepaid, so you don't have to worry about stamps, but it has to come back in the official envelope. Each envelope has a barcode that's unique to the voter. It's part of our confirmation of the voter's identity, guarding against double voting, etc. So that's important to keep in mind as well. It enables the ballot tracking system too, by the way. But to your question about the signature, and this is a big one. When the voter returns their ballot, goes in the official envelope, they seal it, and they have to sign the outside of the envelope in the designated area and date it as well. The very first thing county officials do is compare that signature on the envelope with the signature on file as part of the voter registration record, again, to confirm the identity of the voter. If the signatures do not match, and that's can be explained, right? Some people's signature changes over time, or if there's a missing signature, California law now requires the counties to contact the voter and offer an opportunity to cure that signature issue. If they forgot to sign, they can submit it afterwards. If the signature has changed over time, they can update their signature. We go the extra mile to make sure that every eligible voter has an opportunity to both cast their ballot and have their ballot counted. So any voter who may be getting a phone call or an email or a text message from your county in the days after the election, you may want to take it just to be sure. It's also a good reason to sign up for Where's My Ballot? You know, to have that notification, the confirmation when your ballot's been received and when it's been counted, because that contact information is also helpful for counties to know the best way to reach you if there's any signature issues. So, you know, the other part of your question was, what advice do we have? I think the two biggest, based on why ballots have been disqualified in the past. Number one, make sure you sign the envelope and try to be consistent with your signature. But again, there's the backup is the county will contact you if there's any issue with your signature. The other one is to make sure you mail it back on time. You know, the biggest reason that some ballots were not counted in the primary is because they either arrived at the county elections office too late or they were mailed off too late. You know, you can't mail your ballot back the day after the election. That's like trying to go to the polls after they close. You have to send it, and it has to be postmarked on or before election day. So the sooner the better. The sooner the better when you send it back, not just to make sure that it got there in time, but if you send it back early, your ballot's going to be among the first to be counted, not one of the last. So sign up for Where's My Ballot. Make sure you sign and date the envelope and send it back with plenty of time.
Thank you so much for answering my question. I really appreciate your communication today.
Sure. Gave you a long answer.
My name is Fred Nixon with Disability Rights California, and I'm the supervising attorney for voting rights. As is probably aware, COVID-19 has greatly affected convicted living situation by nursing facilities. Many of the facilities have attempted to limit exposure by not allowing visitors. As a result, the voters need assistance. They cannot rely on family or friends because they're not allowed in the residence to not leave and go to the polls because they will be locked out. The that all will not assist with free about is it all bringing about this and providing any guidance at Disability Rights California. We've been getting a lot of calls about this.
No, thank you, Fred. Very, very important question because, as you know, voting rights are sacred, in my opinion. So anybody who's eligible to vote should be able to easily register, stay registered, and cast their ballot. But I think congregate care homes and nursing homes, if I heard you correctly, are a great example of how COVID-19 has made it a little bit more difficult when it comes to being able to vote. So for residents who aren't allowed to leave the facility and visitors may not be allowed inside the facility, eligible voters who need assistance may feel like they have challenges or hurdles to receive the assistance that they need, but they have the right to vote. So I think one thing that's helpful is to let the operators of the homes remind them that in California state law, we have a Voters' Bill of Rights. And on that Bill of Rights in state law is the right for any voter who needs assistance to receive assistance in order to cast their ballot, right? That's the choice of the voter. And so if it's a family member, they should be accommodating to that. If the personnel at the facility isn't willing or able, they need to be able to allow for those accommodations. And I know that every county also makes special accommodations every election to respond to unique and special requests like this. So another recommendation we have is for voters to contact their county in advance if possible to make those arrangements, to have maybe somebody come to the home to deliver materials or translate materials or deliver and retrieve your ballot and provide any assistance that may be necessary, right? So this is all driven through the lens of voting rights first. If you're eligible, you have the right to be able to register, stay registered, and then cast your ballot and have your vote counted. So leave it to the county to do the extra legwork if necessary to accommodate voters with special needs. And if you, again, need any additional information, you can contact the Secretary of State's office at vote.ca.gov or your county directly at vote.ca.gov. We have a directory of contact information for the elections office in every single county.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Good to see you again.
Good
afternoon, Secretary Padilla.
Hi.
My name is Jacqueline Cotto. I'm with the National Association of Naleo Educational Fund. And my topic of today of discussion is on language access. California is one of the most diverse states in the nation, and federal and state law require that the state provide language assistance to a broad range of citizens who are not yet fully fluent in English. What is the Secretary of State's office doing to ensure that all California citizens know how to request and obtain in-language election materials so they can cast an informed ballot?
Okay. Great question. You know how important that is to me too. Just a side example, I'm going to keep promoting Where's My Ballot because we want as many voters to sign up. I know I signed up to get the messages by email. My wife signed up to get the messages by email. We helped my dad sign up to get the notifications by text message in Spanish. So, we take the right of voters to receive materials in their preferred language very seriously. And I think as you referenced it in your question, it's not just a federal law that requires it through the Voting Rights Act, but California prides itself in going a little bit above and beyond, utilizing other data sets to identify county by county what additional languages for counties to provide elections and voting materials in to different degrees. And so it's incorporated into our voter education strategies, right? We're not just posting and tweeting and doing advertising in English. Our voter education campaigns in multiple languages as well, reflecting market by market the most common languages in addition to English that are spoken in every area. Part of what we recommend to voters or try to remind voters of is when you register to vote, or you have the option of updating your registration and making your language preference known there. So that becomes the default when you're receiving information from the state, like the voter information guide, or from the county as well, not just the ballot materials, but any election and voting information materials as well. So it's a little bit of a comprehensive effort. We're constantly working because every day there's more people registering to vote, and every day there's more people who may have a language preference other than English that are registering and adding to those concentrations in each county that trigger that requirement for materials to be made in additional languages. And it may be a little indirect, but you know, I'm going to take advantage of it. It's a good reminder for us today. Today and tomorrow are the last days for Californians to respond to the census, right? And that census information, other demographic information through the decennial census that helps us, whether it's in identifying language needs for voters or just drawing fair boundaries, through the redistricting process and everything in between. So one additional non-elections ask is if we remind 5 people today by phone, through social media, however, if they haven't completed the census yet, please do it today or tomorrow. And if you already did it, then you know, pass it along. Remind some more family members, friends, and neighbors to do the same.
Thank you so much for your response.
Thank you, Secretary Padilla. Some great questions and great answers. Before we let you go, do you have any parting words, some last tips you could leave us, so any information that will help us increase and expand voter participation as we approach November 3rd?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. Number one, a reminder that the voter registration deadline is coming up. So anybody who has not registered to vote yet, they can do so up until Monday, October 19th. Easiest way to do it is online. Go to vote.ca.gov. But for all voters, you know, again, I went over the multiple options you have to vote and stay safe and healthy. So the ask and the suggestion is this: make a plan. Decide how you're going to vote. Is it going to be by mail? That's our first recommendation. Or is it going to be in person? However it is, try to get it done early. You know, don't wait till the last minute to send your ballot back. The earlier, the better for you and for county elections workers. And if you're going to vote in person, go the first day that in-person voting is being offered. If we all do our part in voting early, we can try to keep the lines to just a little bit shorter on election day, because we are expecting a tremendous turnout. So let's try to keep it as smooth as possible and as safe as possible during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great, thank you. Great advice, Secretary Padilla. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. And we're looking forward to seeing the conclusion of this period of time in our lives. So am I. Thanks again. You have a good rest of the day, sir.
All right, stay safe, everybody.
All right, so at this point, we are now going to transition to our next 2 panels. The first panel is leading elections in a pandemic. And these kind of actually 2 parts. That first one, leading elections in a pandemic, will be a conversation with California election officials. The second part, election reforms safeguarding voters today and in the future, will be a discussion that includes Senator Tom Umberg on California election reforms. But for this first panel, we're going to bring in future California Elections Executive Director, Astrid Ochoa. She will be moderating the panels and leading our conversation from this point forward. So, Astrid, are you ready to join us?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Lupe. And thank you to Secretary Padilla and to our panel of nonprofit partners for that great conversation and questions. I wanted to begin by just providing a little bit of background to our panel. So again, we're going to be talking about leading elections in the pandemic. And as we heard from Secretary Padilla, every active registered voter in the state is going to receive their ballot by mail, but we all have options for how to cast that ballot. California leaders have passed legislation to allow for the greatest amount of safe voting options for our diverse electorates. And how counties are offering in-person voting is going to vary. So it's really important for voters to check their election materials, to read what is happening in their county. We're going to see a range from some counties offering a traditional polling place election, in which case some voters may not see a change to their elections, a big change, to vote center elections where voters can vote anywhere in their county. And if you're doing outreach, again, just encourage voters to read their election materials so that they know what is happening in your county or contact your election office. Our distinguished panel of election officials today represent the various voting options available to California elections and to our voters. In a moment, I will introduce each of them. I want to ask you to go ahead and submit Q&As right there in the feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll take those questions, and I see that many of them are coming. And our panel together really has a vast expertise. So election administrators, as we heard, do everything from determine the type of paper that your ballot is going to be printed on to the equipment and operations on the day of the election. And of course, the important part that we all want is the counting process after the election. So we're going to hear about all of that. And first, we have Kathy Darling Allen, who is the Shasta County Clerk and Registrar of Voters. She has served in this role since 2004, steering Shasta County elections through major changes in California election law and regulation, as well as overseeing the administration of numerous elections and the implementation of 2 voting technologies. Michael Vu is Registrar of Voters for San Diego County. He has over 24 years of election administration experience and has been with San Diego as Registrar of Voter for over 13 years. And he has been responsible for election administration of San Diego County, which is the largest, one of the largest election jurisdictions in the country, with a registered voter population of over 1.9 million. We also have with us Neil Kelly, Registrar of Voters for Orange County, the 5th largest voting jurisdiction in the nation and the 2nd largest in California. He has served in this role since 2005 and has led the Registrar of Voters Office through the largest cycle of elections in the county's 130-year history. Neil has also served in leadership roles at the state and federal level on various task forces and commissions. He is the past recipient of the Public Official of the Year award by the National Association of County Recorders, Election Officials, and Clerks. Gail Pellerin, it wraps up our panel, and she is the County Clerk and Registrar of Voters for Santa Cruz County. Gail has served in this position since 2004. After serving as the county's election manager since 1993, Gail has more than 33 years of experience in public service and has served in many leadership positions at the state level. So with that, I want to invite our distinguished panel to go ahead and share their cameras. Among this panel, we have decades of expertise. We have millions of votes counted, thousands of election administration details attended to. And so we just want to thank them for joining us today. And if you will please go ahead and join me. Great, so welcome everybody for our conversation. And if we can go ahead and take off the screen share. Great, now I can see everybody. So as I was saying, among you, we have decades of experience and millions of ballots counted. So I want to thank you so much for joining us at E-20. I know how incredibly busy you are, so thank you for sharing your expertise with us. And I want to just jump right in. Let me just get my screen together here. I want to look through questions. So as I mentioned at my intro, each of you have a slightly different model of doing elections in your county. So I'd like to just go down the line. Let's go down the state so that you can share with us how you're conducting elections this season so that folks kind of hear the different voting options that are available for California voters. So Kathy, will you lead us on that one?
Of course. So Shasta County is doing traditional polling places for this November election. We are going to open up all the polling places we had open in March, with the addition actually of one extra location for voters to visit in March. And of course, we're also mailing a ballot to every registered voter in the county as well. Our thinking about that was to be as safe as possible. Having the highest number of locations open that were available would allow us to have the smallest number of people in the same place at the same time. Of course, we're also implementing social distancing both here in the office for early voting and in polling places on November 3rd. And sanitation, masking, all of that COVID stuff is happening at our polling places as well as here in the office. One other thing that we're doing that's new for this election is inviting folks to take that vote by mail ballot with them. We're telling them that's their ticket and that they should bring it with them to the polls, and they can run it through the ballot tabulator at the polling place or here in our office during our early voting period. We're trying to save as much taxpayer money as we can and not print 2 ballots for every person.
Great, thank you, Kathy. And let's go to Gail as we walk our way down the coast.
Hi there. Well, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I'm one of the original FOS members, and I just absolutely adore this organization and everything you do for us. So here in Santa Cruz County, we're at a record number of voter registrations. We're at 169,000, which is huge for us. I know that will make Michael and Neil laugh, but it's a lot for us. We mailed ballots to all of our voters on October 2nd, which I thought was really nice and early. Everyone was supposed to have it done by October 5th. Of course, lots of counties mailed them well before that, so yay for them. We had 2 voting locations open starting on the 5th, our office and Watsonville City Clerk's office. And we have our 15 outdoor ballot drop boxes where people can easily drive up and drop off their ballot without even having to leave their car. And they're available 24/7. We have indoor drop boxes as well. And this is what happens in elections. I had published and put out on my website, I was gonna have a drop box inside at the Scotts Valley City Clerk's office. Unbeknownst to me, they have still not opened since the pandemic, so they are closed. So I learned that just yesterday. So we are updating our materials and letting people know that's not available. The good news is there's a drop box right outside, so we're covered. But we will have 16 voting locations that will open up. They're going to be the mega voting sites where any voter can go to any location. We'll have ballot on demand printing, and these are larger facilities. We're super excited to have Kaiser Arena, which is the home of the Santa Cruz Warrior basketball team. Go Warriors. And we will be open with these facilities from Halloween through November 3rd. And outside at each of those locations, there'll be a drive-up ballot drop box as well. And we're going to have 1 voting location up at UCSC. Our experience with UCSC when students are present is that they don't really come out Saturday or Sunday. So now that there's very few students up there, we're just going to be up there Monday and Tuesday with just a mini mobile voting operation there. And the most exciting thing that we have this time is a vote mobile. So we got some grant money, and we were able to purchase a trailer that we can now haul around the county and go to all these different places as long as we have connectivity. And it's basically our office duplicated on wheels. And it's really helped us out to get to some of the areas that we're not having a voting location, areas that were impacted by the fires we had in Santa Cruz County, and other areas of the county that we want to serve. So we're real excited about the Vote Mobile, and we're out at farmers markets, and we're going to residential care facilities, to Fred's note about that, and making sure they have access to voting. So a great team of people, and we're super excited, and 20 more days to go.
Thanks, Gail. And let's go to Orange County, and then we'll go to San Diego County.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Astrid, for the invitation. It's great to be back speaking among FOS folks again. So in Orange County, we have 3 options for in-person voting. We are Vote Center County. We transitioned to the Voters' Choice Act first part of the year. So it really is kind of the same for us in terms of how we're going to operate it. We will have 170 in-person voting locations that will open on October the 30th and will run for 5 days, which includes Election Day. Those 170 locations are located throughout the county and include the Honda Center, like Gail has her partnership up there. We also have one with the Ducks and the Honda Center. And I was just at an operational meeting there the other day, and we're going to have 450,000 usable square feet there between the outside and the concourse. And you compare that to an average vote center size of about 1,800 square feet. So we are going to have a very large facility there, 10 check-in stations, 120 booths, 10 scan stations. And so there's going to be a lot of throughput at that location. Drive-through voting will also be there. We'll check voters in I shouldn't use this analogy, but like In-N-Out Burger. And we'll check them in, get them their ballot. They'll have stalls that they can vote in, 50 of them, and or they can drive through and drop off their ballot. At 42 of those locations, we will have drive-through drop-off. So individuals that want to just drive through and drop off and hand their ballot to somebody, they'll be able to do that. And then the other largest site that we have is a new partnership with UCI. And I've fought for years with UCI to try and get, some changes to how we operate there. And to their credit, they came through, and we're going to have a 12,000 square foot facility there for the first time, which is great. And there's only going to be 7,000 students on campus because of COVID, but still we're going to have that ability to really put through a lot of voters there. The other way for people to vote is their official ballot that they receive through the mail. And there's 3 options for them to return that ballot. The first would be at 116 official drop boxes throughout Orange County that we service on a daily basis. We're picking those up 7 days a week. They're all 24-hour access as well. They'll also be able to drop them off in person at any vote center when we open on October the 30th, or they can do that in Santa Ana right now at our facility here. And then finally, through the mail, postage paid. And, as of right now, our returns are 182,000, which is 500% ahead of 2016. I'm guessing we're seeing the statewide. I haven't even seen the numbers yet from my colleagues, but the volume that close to the mailing is enormous. I mean, it's just been huge. So at any rate, that's what's happening here in Orange County.
Thanks, Neil. An unprecedented election and an unprecedented year, as we heard Secretary Padilla say. So, Mike, could you tell us about voting options in San Diego County?
Thank you so much, Astrid. And not only is it unprecedented, but here in San Diego County, it's uncharted as well when it comes down to the preparations for this upcoming elections. And let me just say, it's always nice to see Neil, Kathy, and Gail. It's been months now that I've actually been able to see them. And some of them are growing facial hair and longer hair on Kathy's part. And then, of course, Gail never ages out there as well. So it's always good to see my colleagues that are out there. Let me maybe put this in context in terms of San Diego County. What we're doing here is when the pandemic hit, prior to the pandemic, we were anticipating that we would need over 1,600 neighborhood polling places, need around 9,000 poll workers to conduct the election, volunteer as when it comes down to the neighborhood polling place environment, because that's what we have done traditionally here in San Diego County. We've never changed the respective model in that regard. But when we looked at the pandemic and kind of the uncertainty of what it did to not just the fundamentals of elections, but the fundamentals of trying to recruit sufficient number of poll workers, trying to recruit and retain polling locations, we said that we couldn't really conduct the elections in the traditional neighborhood polling place environment. One of the great things about the legislature and the governor is they recognize the level of uncertainty about the fundamentals now being impacted due to the pandemic, and really quickly and decisively passed it, regardless of whether or not we agreed or didn't agree. And I know that there was a lot of debates happening during that respective time frame after the March election when the Secretary of State formed a task force. But at the end of the day, I think they recognized, we all recognized that local elections officials needed as much time in place to be able to prepare for the November election, of which not only is it going to be unprecedented, it's a presidential campaign, but also enough time for counties like San Diego County to cut over, to pivot on a dime like we have been. So never in my wildest dreams did I ever think, and there's a level of insanity of all of this that's going on in terms of our preparations, but it's coming together. But here in San Diego County, let me kind of give you a description of that. As opposed to 1,600 neighborhood polling places, we've decided to go towards the super consolidated polling location model, which we will have 235 super polls locations that we are calling them. Now, if you really looked at San Diego County, and the total number of registered voters, we would only need about 184, 185 of them pursuant to the statutes. But when it came down to it, and as we looked at our data and let the data drive it, we said that we needed 235. So we're actually adding 30% more super polls locations than we would have if we just wanted to meet the respective law. Certainly, every registered voter is going to be receiving a mail ballot. In our county, with our total number of registered voters, we have 126 mail ballot drop-off locations. 125 of them are staffed mail ballot drop-off locations with one mail ballot drop-off box that is out there. And so voters, we've launched into one of the most comprehensive voter education and outreach program that we've ever done here in San Diego County to ensure that as we're pivoting on a dime, that voters are along with this, because of the success of any election, of course, is the cooperation and partnership of our voters too, the 1.93 million registered voters that we have. That 1.93 million registered voters that we have is over 270,000 more registered voters than we had in this time in 2016's general election. Voters in this new environment of the super polls, besides receiving their mail ballot, are still going to be assigned to one of these 235 super polls locations. Our strategy here wasn't try to get large, big facilities like arenas. Ours was more big locations, super polls locations, but many more of them to distribute across the entire county, because our geography is over 45 to 5,000 square miles in space. And so we wanted to make sure that we were covering it sufficiently. And so no one person had too far a length of go to, because we have many rural locations as well as very urban. And we had to look at our geography to ensure that everyone had an equal access to a super polls location should they need to. But voters are assigned, and part of the reasons why we opted to move towards the assignment of voters to a specific location is for two purposes. We knew that this was the biggest presidential election that we could potentially ever have. On average, the last 4 presidential general elections here in San Diego County, we have averaged around an 80% voter turnout. That's a high turnout for a presidential election year when you're actually turning the voting model itself on a dime. And so we wanted to make sure that we were distributing voters out, so there was not going to be any length of long lines because of the presidential turnout election. But now, based off the pandemic itself, to ensure that there was not going to be a statistic. We don't become a statistic 14 days later after conducting the November 3rd election in the eyes of our public health officials. And so we wanted to distribute voters across all of those respective locations, and that's why we assign voters to it. And they're used to having an assigned respective locations. The other thing I should mention also is our poll workers. Our poll workers, where we thought we needed 9,000 poll workers, the super consolidated model allows us to have less poll workers, but to ensure certainty, we are paying every single one of those poll workers, as opposed to a volunteer stipend. We are now paying them an hourly wage, anywhere from $14.25 to $18 per hour. They are effectively a county employee with our office, and they are going to serve not just one day, but their commitment is now for a potential 9-day commitment here in San Diego County to ensure that those 4 days when our super polls locations are open, they're well trained, as opposed to a 2-hour training that we normally gave them in a traditional neighborhood environment, precinct environment. It's now a 2-day training that is out there. And of course, for them to serve those 4 days that these locations will be open.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your election models. And as I wanted to just give the audience that perspective that it's really important to look at the county election materials, because everybody's going to be doing different options. And I just want to point to the Superman cape behind you and just really elevate all of our election officials across the state. You guys are all superheroes in this season and are really going above and beyond in terms of making sure that our democracy is strong in California. So thank you guys for that. The big question, of course, many people are familiar with voting by mail. There will be many people that are voting by mail for the first time, but for voting in person in a pandemic, that is truly going to be new, and it's being invented as we go, because none of us here are over 100 years old, so we haven't lived through that last pandemic. And so I wanted to just briefly, if you all could tell me, what precautions are you all taking to safeguard voters and poll workers for in-person voting? We can go down the line and you guys can add on. And then when we conclude that, we'll transition to the second part of our conversation, because I've been told that Senator Umberg has joined us. And so we're going to be joined by him in a minute. So again, what are the steps that you're taking to safeguard voters and poll workers this season for in-person voting?
Are you starting with me again?
Yes.
All right. So we're actually on day 8 now of early voting across the state. So we have already begun in-person voting in a pandemic. And we've seen hundreds and hundreds of folks here every day, which is amazing. We are doing all the social distancing things that have been recommended by our local public health folks and the CDC. And just wanted to share quickly that we also were really excited to be able to participate in a program, a grant program, the Democracy Fund put together with the University of Rhode Island. They have some design graduate folks. They have a great program. You can find it online at URI Votes. And they helped us by helping us plan our polling place layout under COVID. And so they provided us with layouts for all 54 of our locations to ensure that we have a good flow of traffic, so we don't have folks crossing paths, and that we have sufficient space for all the different equipment and the personnel that'll be in our polling places on November 3rd.
And Gail?
Sure. So yeah, we're grateful for the grant money that allows us to purchase all that PPE. And we're going to be taking everybody's temperature prior to coming into the facility. We'll have a floor plan with the flow of traffic on going in and out in one door and exiting another. Masks are required, and if there's no mask, we're going to ask you to offer you one. And if you use it to be outside, we'll have some outside meeting taking place. We'll have hand sanitizer, distance, always encouraging washing. We're getting clear shower curtains and PVC pipes. We're putting some of them on wheels so we can move around. And we're also, I'm really super excited for this too. We're working with our information services department on developing an app we can queue in and out. So remember the good old days when we went to a restaurant and you're full and get your phone number and the text when our table was ready. We're doing the same thing with voting. So get your cell phone and maybe you're out your waits to half an hour, maybe it's less or more, but that gives you some idea and you can go sit in your car, you can take a walk. So that Line app is going to be really handy to keep people spaced out.
Mm-hmm. And Gil, you were a little broken up in your presentation, but I wanted to hear again if you can emphasize that line keeping app that you were saying. I don't think folks caught that piece.
Yeah, so can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just hold that little mic here. So our information services department in the county helped us develop an app that we're going to be using iPads and checking voters in and out. So we always have control of how many people are in the facility. And you can spend your time doing something else, take a walk or whatever, until you get a text alert, it's your turn to come in.
That's great. That's great for line management. And Neil, what is happening in Orange County? I know that you guys have a great video as well to walk people through that experience. I just wanted to plug that as well for Orange County voters.
Thank you. And did you say we're not 100 or we feel like we're 100? I'll say I feel like I'm 100. So here in Orange County, we have a pretty robust plan. You can see it, the public can see it at ocvote.com/COVID. Very detailed plan on what we're doing, but I'll just walk you through it real quick. So when a voter goes to a vote center, the first thing they'll encounter is a signage outside that talks about the COVID protections. They'll walk inside, they'll be greeted by a stand-up hand sanitizer station, just like you would see in the airport, followed by a blade sign that reemphasizes the COVID protections. Our staff will be greeting them right when they walk in, and if they don't have a face covering, we will offer one to them. They don't have to wear one, of course, but we will offer it to them. The staff will be in full PPE. I'm requiring they wear face shields as well as face covering, so all of the vote center employees will have that. On the floor, there will be markings for this physically distanced as they're waiting in line. And then when they get up to check in, they will check in. And our staff, by the way, I was going to mention, are all wearing aprons, kind of like Home Depot style aprons with disinfectant supplies in their apron. And after the voter signs in, we will disinfect the e-poll book as well as the stylus. They will be given their ballot and a disposable pen. I've been telling people I'm in the pen business now because we have 500,000 pens in our warehouse ready to deploy. They will go to vote. We will have every other booth closed. And the reason for that is we wanted to make sure that we had the physical barrier so people couldn't walk through those locations in our sites. After they're done voting, they will scan their own ballot. And then we have dispensers for I voted stickers at all of those scan stations. So now they can take their own I voted sticker. We don't have to hand them one physically. And then as they exit, they will have another stand-up hand sanitizer station as they exit.
Great, great. And Michael, could you share with us San Diego's plans?
Certainly. So our super polls model is going to be similar to, if you will, a vote center model in that regard, where we've now purchased an electronic poll books and we'll have more, on average 7 electronic poll books per locations to ensure that the flow of traffic is even, and we're allowing voters to retire inside the voting booths to be able to cast their ballot. So part of this whole strategy that we have going on is to ensure that there is a quick flow of serving voters quickly, as opposed to congregating that is out there. Last Monday, we received 21 pallets worth of plexiglass, because every single check-in station, the 7 check-in stations on average per locations, will be there. All the other PPE that my colleagues have talked about will be there. One of the things I think that I never thought I would ever learn is all the ways to use PPE, the donning and doffing of gloves that you have to ensure. And for our respective cases, we have worked with our public health officials as well, 2 of them here at our county, to kind of walk us through. So same thing, we'll have a line manager, and those line managers will kind of identify individuals that are not wearing a mask and offer them a mask, because we will have that supplied for them. If they cannot wear a mask or they refuse to wear a mask, those individuals will be voting outside as opposed to inside the respective facility itself. Certainly when they go inside and meet up with the greeter, they will be offered a glove, or as I mentioned, again, to a mask if they don't have one. They will sanitize before they wear the gloves and fill out all the respective materials that we need them to. They'll report to one of 7 check-in stations, as I mentioned, and sign into an electronic poll book, of which there's all of the sanitizing protocols that we will have in place. We also will have a site-specific plan that is laid out. We've looked at all 235 sites and laid out how these voting booths need to be set up to ensure physical distancing and social distancing of voters, as well as the egress and the ingress of voters as they flow in, as well as they flow out. For our voters, our poll workers will have the masks, and we'll have the gloves, and we'll have the face shields, as well as we are instituting for us is every single one of our poll workers, every single one of our staff members here are asked the respective questions, the 3 questions that we all know about now. Have they interacted with anyone that's COVID-19 positive? Do they have a temperature over 100 degrees or more? And have they been out of the country as well? One of the things that we will have is temperature checks of all of our staff before they show up. They'll be doing self-screening. And then also what the county is offering in our county is that every one of the 4,500 to 4,600 poll workers or staff members have the ability to get tested free of charge here in San Diego County. So this upcoming Thursday is when our intervals of getting our folks tested here in our building, but all of our to go get tested well before they show up for work.
Great. Thank you, all of you, for sharing in detail the efforts that your counties are taking to safeguard voters and to safeguard employees as well. And I wanted to now bring in our other guest presenter for this event. And we have Senator Tom Umberg, who's going to be joining us. Senator Umberg serves California State Senate District 34, composing portions of Orange County and Los Angeles County. He chairs the Senate Elections and Constitutional Amendments Committee and is also co-chair of the Senate Select Committee on the 2020 Census. And as we heard, fill out your forms and encourage others to do so right now. And so Senator Umberg, I want to go ahead and invite you to join us.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Astrid. Thank you for organizing this. I had an opportunity to listen for a little while. I'm honored to be among such an illustrious group of folks responsible for the election this year. Although, just watching, I'm thinking there must be a higher authority that is testing all the election officials in California. The higher authority saying, let's see if they can run an election during a pandemic. And let's make sure that that pandemic has a special impact on those who are typically poll workers, the seniors. And then let's change the election rules so you can register everywhere, all the way up to including on election day or days prior to the election. And then let's stress out their budgets to see if they can still do it, even though we're going to stress out their budgets. And then just for fun, right before the election, let's have folks post fake ballot boxes different places just to see if they can deal with all those different challenges and still run election efficiently. And so far, it looks like you can. I'm really impressed by the registrars and all the election officials in California have really stepped up to all these challenges that most of which were completely unanticipated or could not be anticipated. And so you guys have done a really, really amazing job. I'm in Orange County right now. I represent Orange County and a little bit of Los Angeles County. And so I'm part of the Neil Kelly fan club. Neil's done an excellent job here as folks have done all over the state. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years from all of you about what's important in terms of the process. And you've heard from many folks that you have a critical job with respect to democracy. Having folks have confidence in how we run our elections and our elections are fair and that folks who should be allowed to vote can vote and enfranchise, that's really what underpins our democracy. And so it's an incredibly important job. We've changed the laws, as you guys know, and in particular for this election, everyone, oh, by the way, another challenge is let's give everybody in the state who's an active registered voter a ballot, just to see if all the registrars can handle turning in all those ballots. And again, so far it looks like you've done a very good job. What the future holds, we don't know. I think we're gonna see what happens this year and how everyone reacts to being able to universally vote by mail. I realize there are certain exceptions, if ballots get lost, and each of you deals with an additional complication every day. I'm sure you've got a litany of stories of what happened to ballots and the dog ate it and whatever happened. But so that we're providing for both all mail-in, if you will, as well as in-person voting, whether they're polling places or vote centers. This year is going to be different than any year that any of us have experienced, and I actually wasn't. I heard someone say that I might have been around for the last time we had a pandemic. I wasn't here for that pandemic. So again, I'm happy to respond to your questions. I'm happy to respond to your advice. The big question we get asked is what's going to happen in future elections with mail-in voting, and that question I think will be answered here in the next few months as to how we handle it. As you know, we moved the primary election in 2022, and in fact, in every non-presidential year back to June. I think that is really important, especially as you mentioned, Astrid, with the census being delayed. We really had no choice but to move it to June in 2022. It's my personal view that the shorter the election cycle, the better, both in terms of cost and in voter interest. May not be quite as easy for all of you to have two elections more closely spaced, but so far I think everybody's done a good job. So having said all that, I'll be happy to turn it back over to you for questions or advice.
Great. I think today and through this pandemic, I think all of us have more questions because we're all navigating this together. And I think you laid it out perfectly, Senator, that this feels like the Olympics. And I think California would certainly get the gold medal with the leadership that our legislature has showed. And I want to just acknowledge that you were the author of SB 423 and also co-author of AB 860, which are the bills that are providing support to our election system that allow for our election officials to host all of these models as it meets the needs of their voters and their constituents. So thank you for your leadership on those bills. So that is the big question. You called it out. People want to kind of look forward into the future. We are future of California elections, and we want to know what's next, right? Every election cycle, I think all of us policy geeks take out our notepad and check off the reforms that are happening, and then we kind of see what needs tweaking for the next cycle. But what are election officials looking at? What are you looking at, Senator Umberg, when we're seeing that so many voters are going to be receiving their ballot by mail for the first time? We still don't know if they actually will be voting by mail, if they've never have before. And so what are the things that we're looking at? How do we make sure that voters understand how to use that ballot that they will receive and may not have requested? And this is for everybody.
That's a good question. There are several challenges, and as you know, or you may know, that there was money actually allocated. That money is in is a matter of some controversy right now for voter outreach, but the registrar of voters, I think in the individual counties have been doing a good job educating voters as to how they can vote by mail, drop off, vote in person. In terms of, again, what the future holds, I think our challenges are resource challenges, you know, with respect to having everyone have a ballot. It's providing the resources to the registrars to be able to deal with the ballots coming in so that they can appropriately and as efficiently as is possible count the ballots, make sure that people are well informed. Those are our big challenges, I think. So you guys are going to tell me what our other big challenges are. If not now, you're going to tell us after the election as to what we've experienced. You know, we I mentioned sort of in a joking fashion the placement of what I believe to be fake ballot boxes. I don't know what the future holds. No doubt there'll be some other issues, but the integrity, I'll go back to what I said, the integrity of the process is so critical. And we have folks that are trying to undermine the integrity of the process, I think, I don't know that it provides any political advantage, but I think some people think that it provides some sort of political advantage in undermining the process. And so being able to be transparent for all our processes is critical. And I think you all are, for the most part, transparent in how you deal with the ballots, how you deal with the security. So again, you're the folks who are clearest to the issues. You tell me what you think is important as we move forward.
Absolutely. So I do want to tackle that issue head on. I know we've received some questions in the chat on this, and Neil, I'm going to direct this one to you because your county was affected by this. There are election reforms that are that have passed several years ago intended to support the third-party ballot return was one of them. And in conversations I've been with voters recently, many of them are just unsure now. How do I identify a real ballot drop box? How do I make sure that my vote's going to get counted? Can you tell us what tips you would have for OC voters and for other voters here in California?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been a whirlwind the last couple of days related to this issue, so it's very timely. We've done a lot of work to educate our voters on what an official ballot drop box looks like here in Orange County. You can't miss them. They're yellow, gold, white, and 1,000 pounds. They're very large, with the county seal on it, by the way. It's the official county seal. And so what I've been telling voters is to track your ballot. I know the secretary talked about that at the beginning, but that is a really good way for voters to be able to have confidence and to see the entire journey of that ballot throughout. There's been a lot of confusion on, I don't like to use the term ballot harvesting, but I guess that's what it is. And what's allowed and what's not allowed. I think what I've been trying to do is clarify very clearly to our voters and in the media, et cetera, that, you know, it's okay to turn your ballot over to somebody if you choose to do that. What's not allowed and what's not acceptable is to have an unattended box sitting there to have that as a collection device. So I've been telling voters, you know, go with your gut. I mean, what feels right to them, and we've been communicating that on social media and other avenues, is what's important. Track your ballot, do what you feel is comfortable, and you have many options. There's no reason, in my opinion, to hand over your ballot to somebody. Now, I don't want to, I guess, get in that debate, but the reality is postage paid, drop boxes, in person, you've got lots of choices.
You know, Astrid, one of the things that this whole issue of the again, I'll call them the fake ballot drop boxes is raised is as I look at, in fact, I've got my ballot right here in my hand, and there's a place on the back that says print the name of the person returning your ballot and the signature of the person returning your ballot. I think that perhaps some that think they can just drop it off in a drop box without designating the person, that somehow that works in a fake drop box as opposed to the real drop box. And I think we need to continue to educate voters that that other people can return their ballot, as Neil said, but you've got to fill out the back of the form. You don't just drop in the cardboard box sitting in front of somebody's house.
Yeah. Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Senator. Let's pivot to that piece, Senator, that you just mentioned, voter education. Elections are going to vary. The pandemic we have seen now has hit some communities harder than others. There is a disparate impact of this pandemic in our communities. What efforts are being made to reach out to voters that we know have been traditionally underrepresented at the polls and are also now the hardest hit by the pandemic? And let's hear from Gail and from Michael.
Yeah, so one thing that we've started doing is every other Thursday night, we host a Zoom event called Voting Matters, where everybody can sign on and questions can get answered. We did one in Spanish only for our Spanish speaking community. And, you know, I think, again, our Vote Mobile, we're out in the community where people live and reside and you know, shop and do their daily living. And I think that's been really helpful too. Plus, it's a very visible mark as far as the importance of voting. It's all red, white, and blue with a big vote sign on it. So, you know, but just working cooperatively with all of our different groups and organizations and making sure that people have the information, getting out on radio and TV. We're doing videos on a YouTube channel. So as much as we can to get the information out to everybody. And we sent packets out to all of our residential care facilities. We have a program with our county inmate system to make sure they have access to voting. So we're trying to hit all the marks.
Great, thanks, Gail. And Michael, in San Diego, there's diverse language communities as well. How are you all reaching out to the diverse language communities?
We do. I think individuals that have interacted with our office here in San Diego County know that we have second to none, I would say, in terms of our language community and program that we have here. We have permanent staff members that serve all of our federally covered languages. That's Spanish, Filipino, Vietnamese, and Chinese. So we have language coordinators that are just specializing in reaching out to these targeted communities based off the Federal Voting Rights Act. We also have a coordinator that is program is over our Native American tribe, the Sequan tribe that is here, because we're covered for that tribe, even though they have an unspoken, unwritten language. I'm sorry, not unspoken, but almost unspoken. It's a dying, one of these dying languages that the Sequan tribe is trying to resurrect. But really for us, as I mentioned before, we've launched into the most robust and comprehensive voter education and outreach program where we've poured millions of dollars into making sure that every single one of our 1.9 million registered voters are well informed. And part of that community is to make sure that specific pockets of that community, whether it's our federally covered languages or just overall our disability communities or our 65 plus age group communities that are out there, are equally informed as to what the changes are. And so all of our materials, of course, are offered in all these respective languages. All the concise information that we have about all the changes that we're making is found on our website. It's all translated. It's not Google translated, but translated by our vendors, as well as then proofed by our staff to making sure that it is understandable in all the respective dialects and in all these respective languages that we have out there. Certainly on a grassroots level, all of our coordinators are constantly doing Zoom presentations. We are equal opportunity presenters. It doesn't matter which communities that are out there, but reaching out to talk about all the respective change. As I said before, is the success of this upcoming election, something that normally takes years in the making to do. When you're changing the model of an election that takes 4 to 6 years to do, we're here doing it in a 4 to 6 month period, if that is what we were given. So, you know, this has been my primary concern, frankly, is making sure that we outreach to every single community that we have out there, including our language communities out there. So we've placed ads in all the various local newspapers that whether it's the Filipino Press or whether it's the Chinese newspaper like the Epoch Times that are out there. We're placing radio ads in all of the smaller radios, not just the traditional. And then we've also launched into digital ads and making sure that we're targeting to specific voters, whether it's one of our language community voters or whether it's one of our young voters that are out there as well. So the comprehensiveness is like I said, it hasn't been ever done before. And so again, part of the reason why is because we're making this big shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are doing an outstanding job. And I have to say, you said second to none, but I have to say we have excellent California election officials. And I know many are doing great work. And thank you for highlighting some of the practices that folks are doing. There's competition here. And, you know, FOS is all about supporting all election officials. Put that out there.
That's very true.
So I just wanted to, I promised we would talk about reforms. And there's a very important bill that we can all take advantage of now, which is the Every Vote Counts Act. This was passed a little while ago. And Kathy, I want to direct this one to you. There's a lot of fear with now that we have vote by mail. Many people have forgotten how they originally signed their ballots. So now they're like, I have a vote by mail ballot. I want to use it. I have no idea what signature to use. Or some people are saying, what if I forget? Or what if somebody forgets? How are they notified? Kathy, can you talk to us about Every Vote Counts and how counties and how you are notifying voters to make sure that every vote does count?
Absolutely. So we are, generally we tell people, especially in the last couple of years, right, where we've had lots of people updating their voter registration through the DMV, take a look at your driver's license. Whatever signature is there, more than likely we have that in our files and we can match back to that. In the event that we can't match back to that, though, we do contact every voter, whether the signature is missing entirely or doesn't compare to the signature that we have on file. And so those folks now with ballot tracking, they get notified immediately. In fact, I was just lamenting to Gail that when we check those signatures, sometimes the voter will come into our office before we've even gotten the letter ready to go into the envelope to mail to them, because they got a text message telling them that there was a problem with their signature. And so we're scrambling a little bit to catch up with the technology, right? And find those ballots so those voters can cure those mismatch or missing signatures. So every voter that has a problem with a signature for any reason is contacted multiple times. And before signatures at the end of the election, before we reject ballots, they go through multiple levels of review. Something that might have been challenged initially goes through at least 3 different levels of review after that first challenge. So there really are multiple opportunities on the administrative side for us to make sure that the signature needs to be checked, but also we reach out to voters over and over. There's been some really good research done. I'm sure you know, I'm going to have to plug California Voter Foundation. And one of the things that Kim Alexander, the president and founder of that organization who did this research, found was that when counties send multiple attempts to collect these signatures, they get a much better cure rate. And so that's something that we've adopted, and we will be doing again, of course, this November.
Yeah, and so that means the more you annoy a voter with a notification, the more likely they are to respond. So that's great.
And you know, like voters just really need to know that their right to vote is not going to be taken away just because they have bad penmanship. You know, there's opportunity to cure.
So I'm looking at the clock. I still have so many questions to get through. For everyone that has dropped a Q&A question, we'll make sure we get back to you after the event. And I want to keep on going because I think these are really important topics. I'm going to hold you guys just a little bit longer. We've been hearing a lot in the news, and we heard Secretary Padilla talk about misinformation, malinformation, disinformation. There's so many types of words that we can now use. And I do want to hear from all of you. Where are you directing people to get the most accurate information about voting in your county, about voting in California? And so let's start with Senator Umberg, and then we'll go from the state down, top down.
So we direct folks to the registrar of voters here in Orange County if they're getting misinformation. Just as an aside, many of you, probably most, went around during the 1988 election, and we had quite a incident happen here in Orange County where there were folks with signs that said non-citizens may not vote, dressed as police officers, trying to dissuade folks. If folks see something that's really egregious, we tell them to call the police or we notify the FBI. Fortunately, we've not seen anything like that this year. A couple of things, though, just to follow on to what you had said about how to make sure that all communities feel as though they have a right and equal access, rather, to their franchise, is that we as legislators here, I know I've heard from a number of my colleagues about communities that want to have either vote centers or polling places in closer to their community. Just a word of advice is, to the extent you can be flexible, that's a good idea, because otherwise then legislators they won't be calling you to ask that you, at the 11th hour, try to move either polling places or vote centers. You may want to write this down. Sometimes those of us in elective office actually do respond to voter concerns and complaints. In large part, though, I think that we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding, and I'm holding my breath. But in large part, I think we've done a really good job preparing for this year's election.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here today, is to help voters get ready and organizations that are supporting voters get the facts. So, Kathy, where do you send folks to get the facts? And let's keep answers brief to like 30 seconds to make sure we get.
For Shasta County voters at shastavotes.org.
And Gail?
And I posted it, votescount.us for our county and sos.ca.gov for the state.
And Orange County, Neil?
I just want to say, Senator Umberg, thank you for referring folks to us. We love working with your office. I appreciate it. And I do want to say that we set up a trusted election official webpage, which has myths. We actually call them myths and then truths. And that is growing now because we're taking the top 20 that we're getting through phone calls and social media and putting them on our webpage with the answers.
Great. And Michael, what are folks doing in San Diego? Where do San Diego voters get the facts?
sdvote.com.
Great, so you heard it here, everybody. Go to your county election office. The Secretary of State also has a Safe Vote campaign, and they also have great resources there. So go to your government representatives. Okay, so you guys know that I really like to end events on time. I've done it for nearly a decade now with California elections, but I'm warning you, I'm not right now. Just another minute. The last question I have is, why does it take so long to get votes counted? I'm embodying all the voters, right? We know that it's going to take longer. It's a pandemic, people. Give our election officials some time and space. But you guys are the administrators, Senator Umberg. You work behind the scenes. You all gave an extension to election officials to receive ballots up to 17 days after the election. So let's hear from all of you. Why does it take so long? How can we be good ambassadors of this message to voters that might be a little impatient? So Senator Umberg, let's go with you, and we'll go top down.
So why does it take so long? It takes so long because we have a variety of ways where folks can vote. You can vote in person up to, if you're in line at 8 o'clock on election night, it doesn't matter if it takes 3 or 4 hours for you to be able to vote. If you're in line, you'll have a chance to be able to vote. So that's part of it. Part of it is this year where we've got a huge influx of mail-in ballots where our resources are stretched a bit thin. We are hoping that folks can start to count earlier this year, and we'll start to count earlier. But I think the most important thing for election officials, and we're trying to do this, is to manage expectations. The election, for the most part, is not going to be determined either in California or nationally on election night. And by managing expectations, I think we'll do everyone a great service in making sure that they understand that, just because it takes a week or more. In my own election last time, I was just a couple of days before Thanksgiving before the outcome was really determined. By doing that, we do everyone a service so that they can continue to have faith in our process. So thank you. Thanks again, Astrid.
Thank you. All right, others, if you want to jump in on this question?
Well, I just want to say that I think it takes the right amount of time. We do our due diligence to audit every vote and make sure that everybody who casts a vote, we do the research necessary to make sure that it's secure, that it's transparent. And so it takes the right amount of time to make sure everybody's enfranchised and it's done correctly. So do you want it done fast or do you want it done right?
And I would add to that, Ash, Gail said that very well. I would add that there's two things that I don't want to rush. That's surgery and counting ballots, because we want to do it right and we want to do it effectively. And I think Senator Umberg said it very well about managing expectations. I do want to say one thing, that it takes about 48 hours for a ballot to transit through the entire system and to open. And voters need to understand those checks and balances are there to protect their ballot and to ensure that every eligible ballot is counted.
Let me just also add to that, Neil, is what, I think this expectations has already been set for not just this upcoming election, but for years. This is not a new phenomenon for us here in California, maybe for other parts of the country. And I think that's where people are now second guessing or questioning, why does California take so long? But if we go back to the fundamentals of how we and our principles here in California is, We want to be able to count every validly, timely cast ballot. But let me be a little bit selfish. My motives here in San Diego County, as well as I take all 30 days, and the reason why is because I want to make sure, not just because of the accurate count, because if there's any close contests, particularly in the 196 contest in this upcoming election that we have here in San Diego County, you better bet I'm going to be pouring through any of those respective ballots to withstand any recount that is requested before I certify that respective election.
And we need to work together on that, Michael, for the cross districts, right?
The
'Cause we're gonna
49.
do the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And Kathy, do you want to add anything else to that?
Just to tag on to what Senator Umberg said, which was that the last person in line at 8 o'clock at night on election night gets to vote, even if that person isn't registered to vote, right? So we have all of those conditional registrants and provisional ballots to get through. And as Gail said, it really does take the right amount of time to count every ballot.
Great. So we're now at time. I want to have just one last reflection from each of you. What do you want California voters to know? How do we get ready to vote in this pandemic? Senator Umberg, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. First of all, thank you again. I want voters to know that they, one, should cast their ballot. Two, that when they cast their ballot, it will be counted, and that it's a secure process and a secure system, and that we should be proud in California that we really do have a model for the rest of the country.
I'm encouraging voting early.
Vote early.
Vote early and read the materials your election officials sent to you. They have all the answers in those books. Please read them.
And I second all of what they're saying, as well as just saying that there's options, because that's key, right? Voters have the options to choose what they want to do.
And let me just say, for San Diegans that are out there, vote safer San Diego. And part of the vote safer is there are good practices to vote that mail ballot. That's what we're highly encouraging voters to do. But if you do so voting at respective polling locations, do so early on October 31st or November 1st or November 2nd. Don't do it on November 3rd because there will be crowding, most likely.
Yeah. So we're at time. Senator Umberg, thank you for joining us. Neil, Kathy, Gail, Michael, thank you so much for what you do and giving us time and giving me a couple extra minutes to get through this important conversation. Be well, be healthy. Thank you for your leadership in this pandemic. So with that, we're going to be concluding our program. We want to remind you to register to vote if you haven't registered, to track your ballot at where'smyballot.com, or sorry, Where's My Ballot. Look it up, Secretary of State's website, and it'll get dropped in the link. And of course, the big message is vote early. Be a good neighbor, get out of the way for the rest of the folks in your community, and just cast your ballot. You don't need postage, and there's going to be a lot of early voting opportunities across the state. And finally, just share these tips that you heard today with at least 2 to 3 folks in your family, in your community. Let's make sure that California votes and that every vote counts. So thank you to all of my democracy warriors. Thank you for being part of the Future of California Elections family. I want to thank Secretary Padilla for his remarks, Senator Umberg, to all of our panelists, our nonprofit panel, and of course our election officials. I want to thank also our sponsors for making this possible. And I want to also thank all of our partners across the state. We could not be this network that we are without your engagement and your belief that together we can accomplish great and a strong democracy this season. I want to lastly just share a couple of our resources on our website. We have developed some resources that you can take and customize as your own. We have a great voting options animated video. We heard the importance of just sharing options, and that is on our website, as well as graphics and toolkits for social media that you can take and use as your own. And finally, I just want to say, get in touch. Here's our email. There was a lot of questions in the Q&A. If we did not get to your question, we will follow up following the event. We want to make sure that you have all the facts to get ready to vote this season. So with that, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you out there.